Hi, we are here at Davos 2025, and with some incredible people, we're going to have a conversation about, is AI good for the environment? We know it's the big consumption that it has. And how does it look like in respect to that big sustainability movement that we've been driving since 2015 when the 70 global goals come out? So before we get into our point of view of this based on our different backgrounds, I would love if each of you could just do a short introduction. So if we start with you, Jania.
Happy to. Thank you, Anne. My name is Janina Bauer. I'm the Global Head of Sustainability at Celonis, and Celonis is the market-leading company for process intelligence.
Hi, I'm Dan Delury, and until last week, I was the Director of Clean Energy in the White House. And I'm now Senior Fellow for Climate and Energy at Vermont Law School. And I just want to thank all of you that are watching for choosing this session. We're looking forward to giving you some interesting information.
Hi, my name is Vijay Gandhi. Again, great to be here and discuss this topic, which I think is critical for us to come together. I'm a senior scientist and PI at MIT, helped found the Supercomputing Center. I'm also the co-founder and chief technology officer of Radium, which is a cloud computing company that's building solutions for generative AI applications.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Turlick. I'm practice leader of Climate and Energy AI at the Martin Trust Center for MIT Entrepreneurship. I build, research, and instruct on AI for climate and energy solutions.
Hi, I'm Tom Butkenbach. I'm in the large clean energy power systems business. I've just sold my company where we had about 48 gigawatts, $70 billion worth of solar and energy storage projects. And my new companies are now focused on the technology to employ AI to build better power systems, deploying renewable energy for data centers, but all the way down to small scale for communities that have expensive power, more unreliable power in the world.
Thank you so much. So now we know who is in the room here, and we are very excited about this conversation. First of all, yesterday, I will call this a little bit of a pre-event. So we had yesterday at Celonis, where we got some great data and where you can say the topic about AI is not just about AI, it's about the race, who is going to be the biggest on AI, but it also has to do with geopolitics actually, and about who is actually investing and who is making sure that we are setting up new energy resources so we can deal with the huge consumption that is needed for AI. So, Jana, you hosted that amazing event yesterday, and I would love that if you could talk a little bit about this. And then afterwards, I also know that the Trump administration just did a big investment into AI. So there's been a lot going on the last, I would say, 24 hours, actually.
I fully agree, Dan. And I think what was really nice yesterday, both from an AI and sustainability perspective, is that we talked both about how to scale the opportunity, but also how to look at the physical impact that AI has. And because of that physical impact that spans data centers, mineral earth, the energy that is used, water that is needed to cool the data centers, sea cables, it has immense geopolitical meaning and impact as we see it. And I want to speak about it a bit from my perspective of global head of sustainability. I'm a technology-friendly CSO, I would say. And so I believe in a lot of the opportunity that AI can generate, especially also when fighting climate change, when driving sustainability education, when figuring out new opportunities for businesses to decarbonize their supply chain. So there's a lot in it. I think we have to do that mainly with the awareness for the impact that it creates and for also developing solutions to mitigate it. Because if we stop ourselves quite early on from doing anything in innovation, we're also not getting the opportunity. But also being aware that that impact that AI has is like on many different dimensions. I think we're oftentimes talking about the energy usage only. There's a lot more to it when it comes to how countries are working together, what all kind of natural resources that we're using. And I think the very cool challenge, I would say, for CSOs in the next years will be how to calculate that and how to account for that as a business, especially if you might not own all the data centers or you might only be kind of like a user of that. Like, how do you push for that? That I'm very excited to shape out.
Thank you so much. Well, first of all, you're just coming out of the White House with the Trump administration, big investments. In our great conversation salon yesterday, we talked about the geopolitical situation we are in, Where do the investment come from? The power that is going on, the race that is going on. Will you elaborate a little bit about that, Dan?
Certainly. Thanks, Anne. I think the best place for me to contribute to the conversation, and Tom will add to this, I'm sure, is to talk about the energy use. It's not the only thing we should be talking about, but it's maybe the biggest, at least I think so. So last week, or was it 2 weeks ago now, the U.S. Department of Energy issued a report predicting that by 2028, that's only 3 years from now, that data centers would be 12% of the nation's electricity demand, up from 4% right now. Now, as a lifelong electric utility guy and electricity sector guy, that is almost impossible to get my head around. That is so much new generation in such a short amount of time, and also in the face of a lot of retirements of existing generation that are scheduled. So that's just the straight up power issue. But then there's the issue of, okay, what's being used to generate that power? And it's hard enough to think about and try to decarbonize the existing pool of electricity sources. But now we're adding so much more. There's new talk about nuclear, obviously, and I think that's legitimate talk, and we can get back into that later. But still, this is a big challenge. And, I'm here as an energy guy at what is largely an AI event. And the more is my third day. And I'm realizing that, wow, the AI sector needs to know more about the energy sector, because they're depending on it to arrive on schedule and provide this thing. And the electricity system and getting new projects approved can be very complicated and time consuming. And I'll end there.
Thank you so much, Dan. So from MIT, how do you see this opportunity or not opportunity in the work that you're doing?
I think what you were saying earlier makes complete sense. We're going to actually find that the worlds of energy, AI, data centers are going to actually come together because these demands are growing very fast. What makes this conversation particularly timely is the rapid bend in the curve, and we're going to see a fast growth coming over the next few years. A large part of that driven by generative AI and its application. Not a lot of people realize that the simple interaction you might have with a system uses a pretty significant amount of energy. In fact, just running some of the frontier models today uses as much power at a given time as 20 houses. And you can think of how many services are coming up online. Further, as we start to use these more and more, we're going to see this, it's coming into everything we do. A Google search today, I think this is widely noted now, is 5 times the energy use than it was just a few years ago. That's because the models that are powering these have become a lot more powerful. So I think that there's a lot of impact, and we need to be very careful with how we grow this technology. If we're not careful with working with the grid, working with data centers, renewable energy sources, this can turn into a nightmare very quickly that it'll be difficult for us to untangle ourselves. But I also think it's not all bad. We're going to be using AI to maybe figure out new ways to help the environment or solve climate change, or be able to become far more intelligent with how we move about, or increase longevity, right, in human life, which is a great advantage. So it's just, I think, about tempering how we utilize these tools and working proactively, providing transparency that, companies and services that are coming up to give us clear, impactful, and actionable information that we can use to reduce the energy impact of what we're doing. So that if I knew, for example, that every chat GPT interaction I have or conversations using a bottle of water, of potable water, I might be more careful with how I utilize that technology, and maybe even think of something more clever to help reduce the carbon emissions associated with it.
So tell us about the work that you're doing in the space and your point of view on the use of energy with using AI, and how you look at it both from a good and a bad perspective.
Sure, I'm happy to share that. So I supported and taught in the MIT Climate and Energy Ventures class, which is a great class. It's had 60 spin-out companies and over $5 billion raised. And I to support the class, built a suite of AI tools that is helping climate innovators accelerate. For example, we have some policy tools to let them see the relevant regulations and incentives for their business idea. We heard from one startup that said, "Hey, I just spent $10,000 on a consultant who took months to find this information, and this tool just came to almost the same conclusions for free within seconds." So, how can we leverage AI to help climate innovators accelerate? That's a huge part of my work. And then I've also instructed on AI for climate, both within that class as well as in the MIT IAP period. I'm teaching a class on AI for energy solutions where participants are using low code and no code tools to build impactful climate and energy solutions. And then finally, in my research, I'm looking a lot at AI applications for energy management.
Sounds great. Yep. No.
Good. Well, I think we have to start shifting the way we think about energy systems that are powering the new world. Mm. And the load of a data center is has requirements that are going actually beyond the grid, which is why a lot of data centers have diesel backups, etc. So what we're looking at is building a technology that far exceeds the reliability of the grid by using intermittent resources in a semi or hybrid distributed way. So we are using AI to decentralize power generation partially. I think the solution is a combination of grid power and decentralized renewables with a lot of energy storage and software/AI to really power these systems of the future. If done right, we've shown that we can exceed the grid reliability by factors of 10, if not 100, with these new systems, which is counterintuitive because you're starting with an intermittent resource. But the technology is getting better. At the end of the day, it comes down to economics and reliability. And solar, in my mind, is the primary form if you are in places where you have good resource. But there will be other solutions, no question, kind of all of the above. But economics will determine not only which solutions win, but I think economics will also determine where we build these new data centers, AI training facilities. And if we're not very careful and we're not pushing the right technologies in the right areas, then we may lose a lot of opportunity to other countries that have a better support for that. So I was very happy to see the announcement yesterday of the Trump administration about the $100 billion, $500 billion infrastructure investment into AI. I'm obviously concerned about kind of putting a dampener on renewables for that, even though I think at the end of the day, the economics are so compelling. We're selling power at under 2 cents a kilowatt hour now in solar. And if you add energy storage, you're somewhere in the 4 to 5 cent a kilowatt hour range. It's going to be very hard to beat those economics and the reliability that we have. So I think it's a bright future. There's going to be rocks on the road, no question. And the next few years is going to be interesting. But I think at the end of the day, the economics will drive the right answers, and it will be good for the environment.
If I could just pick up on this. I mean, Tom, I'm so glad to hear you talk about reliability as something that can be achieved by mixing things together in a portfolio and optimizing a bunch of different resources, especially when storage is included. Reliability isn't just a question of building a large power plant and running it around the clock, which is, what data centers are basically going to need.
Maybe a quick comment on that. So the grid was built around large generation facilities that needed the economies of scale, like coal plant. You can't economically build a 50 megawatt coal plant. So the whole architecture of our power systems was designed around these very large centralized power stations. We now have the opportunity to decentralize a lot of that, but we do need AI to really manage all of these generation, energy storage, and different uses. And we can control some of the loads. For example, an AI training facility has a very different ability to change its load profile versus a cloud server. And then we can put those together and manage the entire ecosystem, energy ecosystem, in a way where your reliability ends up being much better than in the old centralized system.
So the last round is really about responsibility, because what we are seeing, and I had double check, even though I come from technology, I work in an engineering consulting company for 2 years, which was building up a renewable business for them, coming from oil and gas into renewable. And I saw very quickly that it was really the big technology companies that, with the race for AI, are also going in and contributing. And we know a lot are investing into nuclear and other energy resources. It's a very interesting evolution that is happening right now, that the race to AI is actually also accelerating, that we are building I know we need it, but we only don't need it for AI. We also need it for that very important, most important transition from oil and gas into offshore, onshore, hydrogen, renewable in general. And that's why I have this very positive spin on what is actually going on. So my last round here is like this opportunity we have in front of us, that both give us huge amount of money to invest into a world with the renewable energy resources that we can use. How do you see the next 5 to 10 years? Because I know it's a little bit bad right now because we use a lot of AI. We don't have the data centers, but I mean, that's the natural evolution if you go 50, 100 years back in time. This is innovation that we're talking about, huge innovation that we have in front of us, right? So last thing I would like to hear is, what is your spin on like this opportunity we have in front of us? And before we start the conversation, I ask you all, are you an optimist, pessimist, something in between? So give you like, how do you see this opportunity we have in front of us? I call it the best opportunity ever.
So I think there will be enough reasons to be pessimistic, especially when you're in ESG. But I tend to like the optimist side a lot better. And so my take on it is, we have sustainability goals, obviously, and AI right now doesn't look necessarily as a tool that helps us, at least from that energy and emission standpoint. But the thing is, even beforehand, we weren't already able to reduce it or make the transformation or transition to renewables in a powerful and fast enough way. And I think the reason for that is often that there isn't enough incentives and economics that actually drive that transition. And that the pure, let's say, moral case of this is helpful isn't helpful enough. And so what I see as opportunity from a sustainability standpoint in AI is that now there is a technology that is requiring that shift, because it is requiring a lot of energy and a lot of resources. And we want that technology to succeed because it excites us, it is fascinating, it helps us. And so my hope is that people typically move or change behaviors if it is because there is something in it for them. And so with AI, maybe there's a lot more in it now to actually achieve some of the transitions that we need, and then they have that co-benefit. So that's the kind of like best case scenario and optimistic perspective that I want to add to that.
I think there's tremendous opportunity for AI to be a decarbonization tool. But I have to say, on the other side of the ledger, there's the threat of AI being a threat to decarbonization itself. Unless people understand more of what Tom is talking about and understand that there's more than one way to meet these power demands, it's going to be a tough slog. We're already not looking good on all of the climate change data, whether it's concentrations or whatever. And so we just can't keep going down a rapid AI path without being cognizant of what other things are involved.
So I'm going to take the in-between answer. So in the near term, I'm somewhat pessimistic due to some of the reasons mentioned. However, I do think that the era of unfettered growth is going to come to an end. We're seeing more and more signs that larger models and more we're reaching the ends or the limits of what some of these AI models' needs are going to be. But looking longer term, I'm actually quite optimistic that we're going to figure this out. And one of the biggest drivers of that is, I believe this is one of those unique places where being energy efficient or more environmentally friendly actually has cost savings or revenue attached to it. So it's actually a net positive. And so when the economic incentives align up with carbon reduction or environmental efficiency, that's a great place to be, because that means that we're going to actually have an incentive to work to this that we can realize immediately. But I think the biggest thing that we need to have, and I think you're getting to this, is transparency and making the data available. Most people are well-intentioned. If they have the data and information in front of them, they're more than happy to make decisions that are more sustainable or use it more carefully. This data has been shown through and through. Wherever people are given more information, they tend to act accordingly in the betterment of society, and especially if it saves money, even better. But we have a long ways to go on that. I think as consumers, we need to demand this from our service providers. We have no view into what we call embodied carbon. This is building new hardware. What are the carbon costs associated with that? Even on the operational side, it's very difficult for us to extract this information. But I think we're going to get there, whether it's through a combination of policy, customer demand, economic competition. We'll get there. It'll probably take us a little bit of time, but once we have that, I think then the dominoes start to fall and we start to make good decisions a lot faster.
I think there's lots of challenges associated with AI for climate and energy, like the amount of energy that AI uses, the fact that a ton we emit today is not the same as a ton we emit later. And so we need to take that into account, that a ton we emit today has effects for a long time and larger than a ton we emit in the future. However, I think there's lots of opportunities for AI for climate and energy. For example, during the recent LA wildfires, Alphabet was able to use AI and machine learning to send rescuers to the sites that needed it. And they were able to figure out who needed help when within seconds or minutes, whereas previously it would have taken hours or days. So that's a really exciting example application of adaptation. And then on the mitigation front, I think leveraging AI for energy to do things like peak shaving or load shifting is really impactful. So, for example, if 10 electric vehicles all come home to the same neighborhood at the same time and plug in, that could create what's called a peak load, which the electrical grid may not be able to handle and might necessitate the expansion of the physical grid. But what if we installed AI at the site so that those cars were intelligently charged at different times throughout the night and everyone woke up with their cars charged? That would enable us to not have to expand the grid further and would allow for adding more renewables, decreasing emissions, and saving consumers electricity costs. So those are, I think, some of the great opportunities of many.
Yeah, you ask about optimism or pessimism. I'm definitely on the optimistic side, not ignoring challenges that are real, not just on the power side, but water consumption, etc., and how we power the future. But this reminds me of the late 90s that some of us lived through when the internet became alive. And, we thought that amazing business models like I'm able to buy a book now online. Nobody was even dreaming about the business models that we have today, from social media to other applications that have been massive productivity improvements. I think we will see the same thing about AI. I think AI is here to stay and to vastly grow and have massive impact in our lives. Hopefully, mostly for the good. We have to do a lot of thinking about how to put brackets around the negatives, but we've seen the same with internet, right? And so no technology comes just with benefits. But I think overall, the productivity that our society is going to see, both in the business but also in the personal life, I think is going to dramatically go up. I think the power systems are going to determine how much growth we can see. And I think AI, like you mentioned, has a lot of opportunity there to optimize the systems we have. Quite frankly, the existing systems are not very, very well. I mean, they've been designed 100 years ago, basically, and they really haven't changed. So I do think there's massive opportunity right now to improve our power systems and rethink how we consume power, while at the same time driving up efficiencies that will actually reduce our power consumption per unit. So I'm very bullish. I think there will be rocks on the road. But let's also point out that 8 years ago, when we had an administration change, at the end of the day, I'm not sure if it was a net positive or negative. A lot of things improved in terms of regulatory requirements, and a lot of red tape got eliminated. So there were a lot of positives that we saw in our industry. So very optimistic in the net impact that this will have.
So one thing, so you had asked me earlier at the outset here about the Trump announcement about all the money going towards, I don't think it's our money or his money. I think it's the money from the companies, but still it's a signal. And I wasn't sure actually where the new president stood on all of this, other than being generally tech friendly, as we've all seen. But I just want to note one thing. We're all focused on executive orders, the Biden orders being repealed and the new Trump orders being issued. But it didn't get a lot of attention. But there was a Biden executive order in mid-January or early January on AI, declaring that the federal government should do everything in its power to support AI. Trump has not repealed that executive order. And I can't say that he won't, but I think that's a sign that we've got support in the Oval Office for AI, and now we just have to make sure that it's done responsibly.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to all the panelists for a very important conversation that I think most people here at World Economic Forum Davos 2025 are talking about. Thanks for all your great insight. And across the whole road here, I hear optimism, opportunity. But as all of you also referred to, if you go back in time, we don't always know exactly what is going to be the business model, how we're going to overcome it. But this is opportunity, and we normally find a way, and we will find a way this time also. So thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of World Economic Forum Davos 2025.